Welcome to the Love and Victory Show with Val, the place to laugh, sip on a little wine, and have open and honest conversation. Here you will find the tools to resolve real life issues. Unwind, pour up a glass, and get ready to exhale. Hello, welcome to the Love and Victory Show with Val, and I have today Karli Brown. We will be discussing manage your money. You know, we all go through these financial challenges, and some of us have it all together. But Karli, I think today can sit in this seat and kind of break that down for us and tell us what that looks like in manage your money. Tell them a little bit about yourself and why did you get on this journey to teach your generation and olders about managing your money?
Well, absolutely. Thank you for having me on. But a little bit about myself. My name is Karli, of course, 25 years old. And what made me, I would say, find my passion in wealth building and wealth management was simply the basic fundamentals. Understanding the basic fundamentals. When I was introduced to it initially, of course I was younger, at the age of, I would say 18. I didn't take it very serious at first.
So how were you introduced to this?
Great question. My mom, she's actually an insurance agent. She's partnered with a company, and I would always go to trainings and educational seminars and things with her. As a kid growing up, I just never actually understood what was going on until I would say my senior year of high school. I would say I started wiping the milk out of my eyes.
Okay,
and
I like that.
Started paying attention to what the concepts and what they were teaching, and then they started laying out the statistics, the numbers. Certain amount of people, they don't have enough money saved for retirement. You have people who are dying with no life insurance. These basic things that we know we have to have in place. It's the numbers were they haven't changed. That's what really stood out to me was the simple fact that as long as this information has been about the fundamentals, the fundamentals have always been there for decades. Money has never changed. However, what stood out to me was the simple fact that you have the information. However, the statistics are still remaining the same, especially in our community or in minority communities. And so that stood out to me. And
so a whole nother level.
Right.
So in the minority community and even with your generation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right. So with that, it was an eye-opener. I was like, wow, people don't know this, and wow, people, just something as simple as an interest rate, understanding the concept behind that could save you millions. It could get so many families out of debt. It could change the financial aspect, the generational wealth aspect of so many families if they knew this information. And that's what stood out to me. And it moved me, and I felt I have to share this with people.
Wow. I think that, if I think back to my time and era growing up, I came in an era back in the 60s and the 70s that I watched my parents, we just had to survive. Mm-hmm. Even though my parents was entrepreneurs, it wasn't really taught financial wealth, financial stability, credit. Those are things that you didn't learn until after you done damaged your credit,
right.
And then you have to figure your way out of it.
Right.
With that being said, is that something that was taught in your home growing up?
Okay, good. Thank you for asking me that. Initially, no. However, once my mom became more aware and got hold of the knowledge, mm-hmm. and my parents started applying it. Of course, that was later on in life as I got older, and they got older, of course, mm-hmm. themselves too. As we apply those concepts, things have changed. Mm-hmm. So, if that answers your question,
yeah, it does. And what we're gonna do here is we're gonna really break this thing down to. And I hope that you can. I don't want to get it in front of what you're going to discuss with the listeners and our viewers about financial wealth. But I hope we understand what that mindset is like when you don't know. Mm-hmm. And then when you are exposed to concepts that can change. And then once you grab a hold to it, mm-hmm. and where does that take you?
Right.
How does that change your life? So You said it was kind of eye-opening for you.
Right.
Once you just started listening, you found that that was your passion.
Mm-hmm.
Who was the first person that you shared with, hey, this is deep.
Mm-hmm.
I got it. What do you think about it?
Honestly, I really don't remember who was the first person, but I can say that the first group of people I did reach out to were my family and were my friends, because of course, who else would you, when you have great news, who else would you want to go to?
You want everybody that you love to know about it.
Right. And so that was the pure intention behind it. I love you, I care about you, I want to share this with you. Whether you receive it or not, at least I did my part in sharing with you, because I know where I'm going. And I know where I'm going to end up, because I've planned this out and I have a strategy. It's very big. That's one key tip to take and keep in mind when it comes to wealth building and your money. You always want to have a strategy. You always want to have a game plan. And that's what people don't set aside the time to actually do. Yeah, it sounds cliche. Yeah, I'm sure we've all heard it before. But it helps. Just like with any sport. When you see football players on the football team, they don't just go out and throw the ball at each other. No, there's a game plan. There's a play.
So what is the game plan? If you can take, for someone that's listening right now, they're like, okay, I hear all of that. Where do I start? When I apply to get an apartment, I'm getting turned down. I only make this amount of money and you're telling me I need to go and get a life insurance. I'm just trying to live. You're worried about when I'm gone. I'm gone. So where do you start at?
Well, first we would start. What I was always taught to start with is, what are your goals and your dreams for your personal financial situation, and then I go from there. But from a general perspective, of course, where do you start? You start with keeping track of all your expenses. Where are you spending your money? We need to get a hold of where all your money is going. Once we do that, we also need to see what's coming in, that income, because most people, when I ask people this, what's the most important, I would say, concept when it comes to your personal finances, or what's the most important asset, people say it's their house. No, it's actually your income. It's the money that you have coming into that, because most people in today's world, they only have one stream of income, which is very, very dangerous. Very dangerous. Yes, it's like going on a road trip without a spare tire. Am I making sense?
Making total sense. Okay, before we even go any deeper, I'm sure there's someone sitting out there saying, what makes her qualified to discuss? Why don't you share that with us first?
That's a great question. Of course, like I said before, I am 25 years old. I get it. However, I have people who are training and pouring into me. Not only have they achieved high levels of wealth, but they've also, they've experienced the challenges. The best way to get good at something is not only to study it yourself, but get in front of people who have already mastered it. And that saves you 10 years in achieving whatever goal it is that you want. So,
That's okay.
With this particular aspect regarding wealth, I put myself in rooms with people who are wealthy. I read books from people who are wealthy.
So if you could, and I know that we're not here promoting any one company.
Right.
But because I know that our listeners, and I know sometimes especially, we can be very skeptical. What company did you, or what school, or where did you get your training from?
My training came from Primerica Financial Services.
Okay. And I'm glad you brought that up, because Primerica is actually, and I didn't know, we never had this conversation, and literally I'm asking now because I wondered. Primerica is actually one of my financial companies. And so to hear, yes, because they're really big on teaching and empowering you with information. I'm not here promoting. No, if you want me to promote you on my brand, I will. but they are really big on helping you to understand the importance of understanding how this thing works. Right. A lot of insurance companies, when you go to buy a life insurance, they just tell you a life insurance policy. Well, you need to understand what happens behind that. Okay, so you're gone. What happens while you're living? And so let's start with what happens while you're living, and how do we set that up?
So while you're living, of course, we want to focus on what happens if you die too soon or if you live too long. You die too soon. You have like I said, your income. That's the most important asset when it comes to your personal.
But if I die too soon, I'm gone.
Right.
Okay. If I die too soon, I'm not really focusing in on, let's think about when you're young. We're not focusing in on how that's going to impact the person I leave behind. I'm still young. And you're uniquely different. Me at 25, I wasn't thinking about how that's going to impact my mother, how that's going to impact my loved ones. You're not thinking about that.
Right. Of course. Lord knows what you're thinking about at 25. You're thinking you're still trying to get a grip on this world. However, if you have an income, it's important to protect it, because you have to ask yourself, okay, granted, I do get money from whatever it is that I specialize in or I do. Who else is that income benefiting? That's what you have to take into consideration, because if you do have someone else benefiting from your income, meaning if you have a child and your child needs your money to eat, to have clothing, to live, or if you have another family member. So I know some friends of mine who take care of parents or elderly family members. Someone, I'm sure, if you're not the only one, benefits from your income. In other words, if you die today, is your job going to continue to pay that income? Or whatever profession that you're in, what your income is coming from, is it going to continue to come in if you die today? And if your answer is no, then the next question you need to ask yourself is, where is it going to come from? That's what life insurance is.
You know, I think back, it's so good that you're saying that, because I think back to when my husband and I have been together since we were knee-high to the duck. That's old. But when we were just starting out, because we didn't have the understanding of the importance of building wealth, securing your future.
Right.
We came from a survival, living for today. I don't think that I believe that unless you're exposed to it and you really understand how your poor decisions or selfish decisions impact your loved ones. Can we talk about that a little
Absolutely. If I add on to that, I can say from my experience in the industry, yes, it's just like diet and exercise. You know, yes, it's important to eat right, and it's important to exercise, to physically look good, feel good, and also to be healthy. However, of course, let's be realistic. We're all human. Not everybody is going to do that. Right. And things happen. Granted, well, that's the same way it applies to wealth building. Wealth building, you have to understand that it's a process of seed and harvest. A lot of people want money right now, like today. Like, if I do this right now, when will I get this? Or how fast can I? No, with wealth building, I keep hitting the table.
That's okay.
With wealth building, it's totally different. You have to understand the concepts that what I do this month will affect me next month. And what I do this year will affect me next year. That's how you have to think when it comes to your money. You can't think for today. You have to think for tomorrow, if I'm making sense.
That makes total sense. So if I'm talking to if you're talking to a 23-year-old, a 25-year-old that may have been exposed to what we would call the good life. Their parents, very stable upbringing. They never really had to want for anything, but they're stepping out into their own responsibility. What advice would you give them?
Save, save, save. My mentor always tells me to save until it hurts.
So what does that look like, saving until it hurts?
Great question. When it comes to saving, you always want to put your money somewhere where it's going to grow. Most cases, and I'm not soliciting anything, I'm not making any recommendations, I'm just sharing knowledge. Most cases, statistically, what the average person does is they'll go to their local bank, credit union, any institution that they are familiar with. Fine. You're starting off to a good step. However, when it comes to saving your money, like I said, you want it to grow. And me personally, I like to believe that time is money, and I don't like to waste neither one. And I'm sure a lot of you out there would agree as well. So when it comes to saving your money, you want to put it somewhere where you'll get a better rate of return.
So am I hearing you say that I get a better rate of return from some other place versus my local bank?
Basically, yes.
Okay.
Statistically, it's been proven, and I know you guys don't want to go based off of what I'm telling you. You can Google this right now, whoever you're banking with, and look up the interest rate. In most cases, it's less than 1%. And so
putting my money into a savings account is not always the wisest thing to do.
What?
Or would I put it in a savings account, build that up, and then move it over somewhere else?
Well, everyone's situation is different.
What would you recommend me doing?
But on a case-by-case basis, I would say...
Me.
You personally.
That's almost 60. Yeah. What would you recommend me doing?
Okay, if you said you have your money sitting somewhere and you want a better rate of return, what would I recommend? Well...
At this point, because at 60, technically my lifespan is not one of someone that's 25.
Right.
So what would you recommend me to do for my better return on my money?
Well, we would look into, I first of all, I know you want to keep your money.
Yes.
We don't have time, especially, at 60, we can't afford to lose any of it.
Right.
So my goal would be to help you protect it and to grow it. Most cases, most people around the age of 60, they go to banks. They go to credit unions because they feel safe there. And that's in their mind.
I did before tell you. You see what just happened in California. Okay.
Right.
Okay, so.
Right. And that's why I teach the importance of ownership. Whereas with someone like myself, we come in and we say, hey, you're with this bank, you're with this credit union, that's great. If where you're at is benefiting you, because like I said, everyone's case is totally different. And I not only go based off of that, I also do a financial needs analysis. I get a complete snapshot of your total financial situation. But based on that, looking at where you're at, if it is benefiting you long term or whatever according to your personal goals and dreams, we'll leave you there. But if it's not beneficial, I'm going to recommend something according to how you personally feel about your money. Whether it's you would rather protect your money or you don't care, you just want it to grow, we would go from there. And in other words, yes, I would encourage you to put it somewhere where you would get a better rate of return.
Okay. And so for someone like myself, I'm looking for, mine is going to be a little more rapider. I need return more quickly than someone that maybe is 25. Would you say that, or am I thinking about that wrong? Because I'm not the expert in it. You are.
Okay. Oh, you got my brain doing cartwheels, but I'm glad you're asking me these questions because I would personally say most people who are my age, they don't have anything saved. They don't have enough saved.
So what's enough? Is it $1,500? $1,000? Could I invest, if I have put aside $50 a week out of my paycheck into my savings account, or $50 every pay period, and so now I've finally gotten it to $2,000, $1,500. Is that a good amount or to start investing, or is that amount to keep building on?
Well, I would say it goes based on your income, how much money you have coming in. So if you do have, let's say for instance, you only make $2,000 a month, but you have $2,000 saved. We personally recommend that you have 3 types of accounts set up. You have a short-term account, you have an emergency fund that's strictly for emergencies. That account is strictly set aside for emergencies. Whether you catch a flat tire, you get in a car accident, your car gets totaled, whatever reason, something happens out of the ordinary and it sets you back. You don't have to go get into more debt to have something. You have an emergency account set aside.
Okay.
That's 1. 2 is a short-term savings. Most cases we recommend, let me go back. The emergency account, we recommend that it's up to 6 months worth of your income. So if you make $2,000 a month, 6 times 2,000, that's 12,000. You want to have at least 12,000 saved in that emergency account. Am I making sense? Because what if you get sick?
Because if I get down and I don't have something to fall back on, at least I can carry myself for 6 months. Okay.
Right. And I'm going somewhere with this. I don't want everyone to get discouraged, because when I use these figures and I use these numbers, a lot of people go, well, I don't have that kind of money. Where do I start? What do I do? That's where people like myself come into place. I know with my company, I can't speak on other companies' behalf. Right. You don't have to have anything to get started to save with us. We work with you because we want to stay within your budget.
So I'm confused.
I'm sorry.
So I don't have to have anything to start with you guys. No, I like America. Okay. What do I need? If I came and sat down with you right now today and I said, I don't have any extra money because everything is going straight to bills, but I need to start doing something.
Right.
What would you tell me to do?
My first question to you would be, okay, Ms. Val, what do you personally feel comfortable with? If you were to set aside a certain amount of money on a monthly basis, you could close and you could still sleep with at night. If you were to tell me $50 a month is all I can do, we'll work with that. If you were to tell me $25, we'll work with that. We work with whatever you're capable of giving us. However, if you can't give us anything, we'll work with that. So my next step would be, like I said,
how could you work with nothing?
Great question. We digging really, really deep because now we're going into.
I don't have anything, but I want to have something.
Right.
So, what would you do?
How would we start with nothing? We do something called PACs. Well, I'll use myself as an example. I started with nothing when I started investing. I didn't have anything, and when I sat down with my investment professional, we set aside $50 a month. Thank God I started that in 2020. My account has grown to, I want to say, over $5,000.
Wow.
And I literally ran into, I take that back. It grew to over $7,000. I took some of the money out not too long ago to pay for some emergencies. But it felt good because I didn't have to come out of pocket. I had something set aside, if I'm making sense.
Well, it is making sense because you started somewhere, and to the naked ear, and if you don't mind me bowling down that alley, for those of you that are sitting there and you're like, oh, so how can she tell me something? She don't have about, it's been a couple of years and all she has is 5,000 or 7,000. Well, here's what I would say to you. She started with nothing. She didn't even understand the concept of what she's doing. So to you, it sounds like it's nothing. But when I hear that and I think of your age, that sounds like $1 million to me. Okay.
Right. And I'm sure someone in my same predicament would say the same thing.
Yes.
Because here it is. Just think about it. Put yourself into your own personal shoes. Or mine if you want to. Just put yourself in this perspective. You only make $17 to $20 an hour. Some people. That's right now, that's considered minimum wage.
And people don't understand that.
Right. And so all your money is going towards bills, expenses, miscellaneous, whatever it is. And I'm sure most people in that situation, I hate to say it, are robbing Peter to pay Paul. Because you're not making inflation is extremely high.
And especially if you're living on your own.
Right. Especially if you're living on your own. The cost of everything is going up. And just a side note, an update on that, it's not going down. So let's let that go. Inflation does nothing but this. So we have to, our job as individuals, as human beings, is not to panic, but to adjust when it comes to that.
So for those that are listening and thinking that that's nothing, like I said, it sounds like $1 million to me at that age. So I don't want people to get so sidetracked on that $5,000 or $7,000 like it's nothing over a few years. That's major. The fact that you start to do something, you're putting something aside for your future. If nothing else, you're understanding the concept of saving and growing.
Right. And that actually, I got excited when I looked back at that account. And that was just one account. Now with that experience, I can take it and I can share it with others. But to those out there that are saying that may not be enough, granted, like Ms. Powell, you just said, I started with nothing. Zero. And I was only putting in $50 a month.
And what age were you?
In 2020, I want to say I had maybe 22, 23.
Okay, so think about it. At 22, and now she is 25, and she's already, you got up to 7,000, but you had some emergency that came up. Thank God you didn't have to go get your check. That you have to already pay, it's already gone anyway. There was some savings there.
Right.
And just imagine where you would be at in just in another couple of years.
Right.
But where would you be if you hadn't even started?
Wow.
You understand? And I
Yes.
think we have to understand that. What it's just like a savings. If we don't start at some point, our time to really grow it at 60, I don't have the time you have.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm doing is delaying the inevitable. And you know what that is. It's going to come a time I still got to pay out. Now, how much am I going to have there to pay out? So let's talk about credit.
Mm-hmm.
Because credit is another thing that costs us. Because when you have poor credit, what do? You end up having to pay more for something than someone that has good credit.
Right.
As I was growing up, I wasn't taught credit. So what happened to me was, as a young lady, a young girl, I just went, God, you know, I didn't understand the importance of not going and using your Social Security for this and not worrying about paying student loans early on. A lot of things got me, which tanked my credit score.
Right.
That eventually, because I was never taught about the importance of credit and establishing financial security, then you come with that same mentality even into adulthood. So what happens? You end up still bringing those bad behaviors in your, oh God, now I can go get anything I want on credit. My name, I used to hear people say, your name means something.
Wow.
My grandfather, my dad, your name, it means something. Well, you can just go into a bank and sign your name, or go into an establishment and sign your name and they give it to you. My name means something. Before they were like, go and come back. Work on this. So let's talk about credit.
Credit, I like to think of it as a grade on how well you can hold up your end of the deal with taking care of responsibilities. That's how these companies communicate to each other to see if you're a credible person. That's why it's called credit. And it comes with being disciplined, if I'm being honest. However, in most cases, a lot of people aren't aware or they're not in the know of how to even start. The best thing to do is, like I said, is to keep track of where your money is going. And that also, comes to mind when it's regarding your credit. When you also want to keep track of all your debts that you owe. You have online websites you can go on to. I know there's another credit. I can't think of the website off the top of my head, but you can pay for it one time. Well, no, it's free once a year. Not Credit Karma. Credit Karma is free year round, but it's something else. It's
Expedia.
It might be Expedia.
Let me tell you something. And if you would like for me to advertise you on my website, get with my people. Expedia really changed my world.
Okay.
And I want to talk about that because credit is so important. Because if you don't know, you get tricked. You get a credit card. Credit card may not be something, and please jump in on here. I'm not the expert. I'm talking about life experiences. When you are paying just a minimum on your credit card, and you're paying it on time every month, what's happening to your credit score? Because that's where they see your responsibility at. Because my concept, what I had to change, I'm telling my creditors, the people that are looking at me to approve me for something, they're just saying, even though this is how much money she can pay, this is how much money she makes, she's still only able to give us our minimum. What is that doing to your credit score?
Well, your debt to credit ratio, of course, is skyrocket. They're not communicating. So, in other words, the credit companies are looking at you and saying, okay, that's all you can do. And we're going to leave you there until you can show us otherwise. But it's going to take longer for your score to increase because you're making these minimum payments, if I'm making sense.
And the debt is just, they're adding more interest to it. And the debt is steady going up on what you...
Right. Depending on the type of contract you're in, because there are certain, I don't want to go into too much detail, but I know there's secured credit and then there's unsecured credit. There's interest rates.
What's the difference in that?
Let me not elaborate on
Don't
that too
get
much.
too much, but just tell me a little bit about secure and unsecured.
Secure, I know in most cases the interest rate doesn't really fluctuate, and it locks you in at a certain amount. Like you say, for instance, you have a line of credit for this up to this amount, and that's it. And you just make payments within that credit amount. And as long as you make your payments on time, your credit score will stay decent. However, most experts recommend that you pay a little bit more than the minimum, depending on what type of contract you're in.
Here's the thing, every time I hear a little bit more, I still always go back to, it's kind of like even on a mortgage. If they say if you just pay a little bit more on your mortgage, you're paying it down quicker. You have to move out of the little bit more. And I'm not the expert on this. I'm only telling you from someone that came from probably did I even have a 400 score? To sitting there. I'm there. But I had to learn that through some very bad times. And so what you don't do, you don't just pay, and I think American Express is another one if you want my advertising. American Express is another one. They want you to pay that balance off every 30 days.
Oh, wow.
Within 30 days. I have no problem with that because I learned that paying that off is shooting that score up. You know, you don't have to take every credit card that comes out.
Right.
But when you're paying that debt out, it's showing responsibility.
Right. You can keep your end of the deal. You're a credible person. That's really, at the end of the day, that's all they want to know. You can show us that you're going to keep us in business.
You're going to hold up your end
right,
of the bargain.
and hold up your end of the deal.
Right.
If that makes sense.
So what credit cards would you recommend to build your credit?
For some people, I would honestly say if you have a challenge with, and this is really opinion based, if you have a challenge with paying on time or your income is not there for you, I would personally say try a secured credit card. You know, the interest rate, I believe it's locked in. There's no fluctuation there. You owe that certain amount of credit that was extended to you, and that's it. If I'm making sense.
Yes, it does.
But
so that's what the security is.
Yes, that's what security is.
They're not going to give you anything more than what they agreed to give you.
Right. And some cases, you know, with some credit institutions, they'll give you a more line of credit if you show you've been a responsible person and you've been making your payments on time.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Okay, I'm gonna ask a question from the back of the room, from another younger generation. Is there anything that you feel that you would like to know at this part? You're just freshly graduated from college, Abigail, and you are starting your professional career. You're stepping out in the real world. What questions would you ask of our expert here today?
Yeah, so I'm actually would consider myself a pretty financially literate person already. Thankfully, I learned lessons from my parents growing up, try not to make the same mistakes. But something that I feel like I don't really understand at all, and I want to, because I hear people talk about all the time, is you're talking about investing, and I understand investing with your savings accounts, and I have a 401k, I have all that. But the stocks, or if I wanted to invest in a business and that kind of thing.
What stock would be a good stock or something for you?
Yeah, or how even does that work? Because I was always under the assumption that you make money immediately with that, and I realize you do not make money immediately with that.
Question.
Like I said, when it comes to wealth building or just generating some type of net worth, let's put it at that, it's all a matter of seed and harvest. You know, as from learning from other professionals in this industry who are well more experienced than I am, they all would tell you it's a matter of longevity. The longer you seed and harvest, you know, when you plant a seed, you don't plant the seed one day and you come back the next day and dig up the dirt and say, oh, there's no tree. Well, of course, you got to leave it there, water it on a consistent basis, make sure the ground is fertilized. And I say that to say that's the same way it works with your money. A lot of people, when they save their money and it gets to a certain amount, what do? They see money and they go, I can
take a trip.
Yeah,
I can do this.
Oh, I can go on a cruise. No, you just told me. Well, okay, I'm jumping all over the place, but
No, you're not.
I'm using an example. You just told me you want to send your son off to college, or you just told me you have children. You know, you want to make sure that you leave your house for your grandchildren. You know, these are things that you have to keep in mind. You got to think of keep the goal, keep an end goal in mind when it comes to investing your money. But going back to that, yes, when it comes to investing in certain stocks, you want to think of stocks as stocks are literally it's just like a slice of pizza to a company. Stock is basically having a part ownership in a particular company. So say for instance, Miss Val, she puts out stock for her company. You have, and let's picture it as a slice of pizza. Everybody gets a slice of that pizza. Each pizza is a stock in Miss Val's company. And if you want to get a better well, let me reword that. If you want to have a better understanding, or you're not sure of who to invest in, think about it like this. How do you invest time with other people? How do you choose to invest time with people? You go based on their performance as a character, you go based on their character, or how they've proven to you who they are in the past.
Yes.
Right. Companies work the same way. Think about it. All these household names that you see. Johnson Johnson. Give me another one. Campbell's Chicken Noodle. Crest. You see them all on the shelves. They're not going anywhere no time soon. Why? Because they understand innovating. They've grown. These are big companies. That's how you think about investing your money into certain stocks, if that makes sense. A lot of people, they think about, oh, Apple. Or Apple's a great company too if you want to invest in them. My thing is, think about longevity. Think about their history, their performance. How long have they been around? How good of a Walmart is a perfect example. HEB, Coca-Cola. These are things you want to keep in mind of longevity.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
So when I am looking to invest, I want to look at someone that has been around. I don't want to just put, and I'm going to cut this because I don't want to. We got to keep going here. But this crypto thing, I walked into what is this? What is crypto?
I'm going to be honest with you. I really don't know. All I know is that it's some kind of online digital currency. People are using it as another way of investing. Honestly, like I said,
you're not here to run any other brand, any other avenue down.
Right. However, because some people that I'm associated with have put their money into it as well, just to give it a shot. And like I said, you don't want to shut anything else down. I put it in my perspective. If you're going to dive into that, I'd like to say, don't put all your eggs in one basket. And I know you got somebody out there that's going to say, well, Kobe said, go ahead and put all your eggs in one basket, because what if you have another egg? Granted, that's if you have another egg. But in most cases, in today's society, we don't have another egg. You don't have enough money. You don't have time, and you don't have money to play around and waste. So you have to be diligent with it. That's what I mean by don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Oh my God! If this is not a way to do part one of this conversation and end part one, oh my God! Don't put all of your eggs in one basket. I think that's the most profound thing that I've heard. And make sure you're not paying the minimum, right? On any balance, whether it's your house note, whether it's your car note, whether it's a credit card.
Right.
Do more than the minimum.
Right. Show them that you can go above and beyond. Just like if you were to get a job. You know, when you want a job and you go to the job interview and say, for instance, they give you a shot the first day, what are you going to do? You're going to go above and beyond, because you want to show them that you're credible, that you're reliable, that you're responsible. Same way it works with your credit.
So in other words, if I can go on an interview, don't show up. If they tell me it's at 1 o'clock, don't show up at 1 o'clock.
Show up at
12:30.
12:30. There we go.
Have a seat. Have a seat and wait. All right. I love this. Tell me, guys, we're going to bring Karli back. I think Ms. Brown has a lot that she can share with us. She's going to teach us. I know I was pushing. I know I was asking the question. I'm just excited. I'm excited. I don't want anyone to experience what I experienced as a young adult, not understanding the importance of credit worthy, being a person of good character with your credit. And so we're going to be bringing her back, and we have others that we're going to bring in, because it's so important to position yourself for the future. Karli, can you tell them a little bit about yourself? And of course, do you want to come back and do a part two?
Absolutely. Because if I'm being honest, we really just touched the rim.
There you go.
Of wealth building. Because I know you all of you have heard this verbiage, these concepts. I'm sure you've heard credit before. I'm sure you heard pay your bills on time. That's just the minimum. I mean,
that's minimum.
That's the surface of wealth building. It digs deeper. Everyone's situation is different. So yes, of course, I'm looking forward to a part 2.
And don't be surprised when she come back that we may have a new sponsor on the next. Her name and our name.
Ooh.
We love you guys, and until next time. Bye.